Did I say I would post videos in between deleting the original version of this video and uploading this version? I didn't know I'd write the entire script in less than 12 hours, including the time I spent sleeping last night. Enjoy, unless I deleted it again. So sorry to Chojimi, who was in the middle of the original when I deleted it. Go watch his and Taeju's recent videos on IZ*ONE. Links will be in the description. Any K-pop fan who has been around for a long enough period of time can tell you that K-pop tends to follow patterns. Even the decision to forego patterns is part of the patterns. See prominent fourth-generation groups like NMIXX or the people they were seemingly inspired by, aespa. When I was watching K-pop music videos when my grandpa came over, he saw the onslaught of YouTube results and commented, "This is really an industry." I laughed and said, yeah, it's an industry fueled by patterns and familiarity made unfamiliar, the Freudian uncanny. In some cases, I think fans might be held partly responsible for the specific ways K-pop evolves, but sometimes companies ignore the fans. Sometimes the conflicts are even quantitative, yet fans today will clamor for our distinct, disturbed reality in the name of a group called IZ*ONE. As a community, I think many of us wouldn't hesitate to fiercely protect IZ*ONE. There are many possible explanations for why fans disregard the rigging controversy. Perhaps nothing could take away the dual sin of coming from Mnet's famed Produce series. Perhaps the members were already too beloved in the hearts of fans. Perhaps people didn't believe it, though it appears unlikely, knowing the two names who are meant to make the group according to the real votes. I think there are many reasons. I think many K-pop stans are aware that WIZ*ONEs are a special fandom. They are, like I said, fiercely protective. They're incredibly passionate and hold the 12 members close to their hearts, crying over any interactions they have post-disbandment. Perhaps that is the issue, disbandment. I've seen people say we look at IZ*ONE's career differently nowadays, that it wasn't the blissful experience everyone portrays it to be after the fact. This video is many things, but in part, it's a time capsule. A few years post the rigging scandal and after IZ*ONE's disbandment, Mnet took on a new venture. They could not create another season of Produce. So, they created another season of Produce and gave it a fancy new name, Girls Planet 999. Kep1er wasn't born free of controversy, even though the results were, as far as the public is aware, not rigged. It's an understatement to say that the members were subjected to immense hate that still follows them when they're nearing the end of their contracts. It's hatred that tears the fandom apart on the daily, and everyone asks the same question: why can't things be like how they were with IZ*ONE? Kep1er will probably be disbanding soon, though there are some rumors that their contracts will be extended. Personally, I don't know how to feel. I love Kep1er, but I hate being a fan of Kep1er because there's no sense of community that ties people together, at least as far as I have seen. But maybe things will change. Maybe nostalgia will be the key to Kep1er's legacy. Still, I think it's important to try to substantiate our reality with the information available to us in the present. The fact is that there is a clear difference in the way each group's songs up to this point were written. That is not to say Kep1er's music is bad. None of this is to insult Kep1er, but I also can't lie and say their lyrics compare to those of IZ*ONE. This is what I will be analyzing today. It's easier to start with Kep1er because it's difficult to categorize all of the ways the lyricists managed to flounder almost all of their title tracks. Kep1er has excellent B-sides in Korean and Japanese alike, but their title tracks have a reputation for being extremely weak. I'm truly just going to get the easy stuff out of the way. I have made videos on most of these songs. I've been a fan for a while, namely since around the Queendom days. What the fuck do Wadada and We Fresh mean? I still don't know. Wadada seems to be gibberish. I know D4 was successful. Zimzalabim is iconic for better or for worse. But Wadada is an onomatopoeia, I think. It's not random for random's sake, I think. I've made excuses for it before, that I know, but I can't do it after We Fresh. Is it supposed to be like refresh or something? But we as in, as a collective, we refresh? We are refreshed? I've read Beowulf twice in my lifetime, and that was an easier read. These songs do not make sense down to the strangest of details. Wadada is dreadfully vague. We're meant to be going on an adventure, but fuck knows what the adventure is. Same with the subject's dream or this place. I suppose that running to wherever the subject is allows room for the listener to make personal connections fit within the song's context, but it also feels like the writers didn't have the balls to commit to the bit, something many fourth generation groups master. If you're here to tell us we're going where you've been picturing, tell me something about it. I'm listening because I want to know. If you wanted to be vague, you could have channeled a style that would suit those choices better. Perhaps something that made use of the absurd, or at least the abstract. We Fresh genuinely started pissing me off, and there was a point where I was the song's number one defender. If you would allow me to go on a bit of an aside, I would be very grateful. Whoever wrote We Fresh has no idea what makes a good hero, which might explain why Yeso was literally supposed to make a butter knife look threatening in the video. I am most certainly not caught up on My Hero Academia, so don't you dare spoil me. But one thing I don't think we talk about enough is how All Might is genuinely an amazing character. Not because he's strong. It's the moments where he has to look strong while feeling extremely weak that make my heart ache. He is an example of what I call rebelling to be safe. He stands out from the crowd, a new type of hero like We Fresh wants to portray. Said hero needs to, on a fundamental level, seek out things unlike those they describe, like getting thumbs up. All Might provides comfort in part because he has to trick himself to not be scared. When he is rebelling against others' wishes, he is refusing to slow down his work because he does not want his self-perception to change alongside how his body is literally deteriorating. He's scared of failing people, including himself. You don't become a symbol and not try to hold on to that version of yourself. I get that it's exciting to express how you feel empowered, but they're claiming they are doing this in an innovative way, and I just find this annoying. It reminds me of when I read Divergent and everyone was saying it was so good, but it was just fast-paced action scenes. I thought I was a plot person more than a character person for a long time. I think I'm a character person. This has zero heart, and I don't dislike selfishness in characters. I love it, actually. Love a bad bitch, but you have to show me how and possibly why you're a bad bitch. There is no struggle here, no distinct bravado or transformation, even literally, and I need something to latch on to. That's my aside, but we still have other issues like persistent repetition, which, okay, make my job easier. There's nothing to the repetition. I'm a K-pop fan. I'm searching for patterns. I like epistrophe. Big fan of anaphora. This seems to only have a sonic basis, though. I will say that I like the reference to yellow and specifically blue because it's something we view in a certain context in regards to IZ*ONE, but we'll talk more about that later. The other thing I like is the references to eyes. Big fan of eye symbolism regarding sight in terms of morality. I don't remember too much about Antigone, but I remember really liking that. Giddy is also tied in with the repetition. There are also just strange lines that don't make sense when you take the entire song into context. Giddy talks a lot about physicality, talking about trembling, trepidation, and shaking. Even while being very curious and secret, they talk about signals and where they were headed. It's cold and metallic in a way that doesn't make too much sense when surrounded by the sheer feeling of giddiness every which way, no matter where you look and turn to. I'm willing to give credit where credit is due, though. I love Galileo. I think it's such an interesting song because it essentially sets up the speaker as a god. I was just telling my sister I was looking for my Jesus list while watching Hotel de Luna. We were watching Hotel de Luna, I should say. I had to keep a list of Jesus's characteristics to compare characters with if I had even an inkling of an idea that they were Jesus figures. Just AP Lit things. Being a god figure is interesting, though. I've seen it before, obviously, but usually not framed in a similar way, talking about their relationship with all of these hearts of hearts, like their own galaxy under their direct control. There's a lot more to IZ*ONE's music, though, in my opinion. If only overall rather than based on any one specific song. But I kind of just want to break things down by song, as I think they each have a lot of their own strengths as well as motifs. Obviously, those develop across the different works, but I digress. We can start with La Vie en Rose, and it's a good one to talk about. There are certainly existential implications of that play, though on this channel that always seems to be the case. I don't have a problem. I haven't sold my soul to Jean-Paul Sartre. I'm fine. They question godlike authority in talking about making it red. The concept of coloring life is an extremely interesting one, but first, I would like to focus on the word make and others of the like throughout the song, such as how they shine and dance, their heart burning up, their place before the rose representing the character they project. In making things red, IZ*ONE refashions reality into one that they are able to claim ownership of. Creative writing is all about refashioning reality, but in this way they go beyond creativity because their influence is able to alter essence, but not for others in the way the quote-unquote other does. They pay homage to their peers, an important move for them specifically, as La Vie en Rose was meant for another group, CLC, tying them to CLC's story in the industry. As a result, it seems the stated like ooh ah references Twice's debut before them. Even more importantly, they refashioned another song they referenced, the original La Vie en Rose, made long before a song about the life in pink where love can change lives. IZ*ONE takes ownership of their La Vie en Rose, qualifying the term to mean the life in red as opposed to blue, a state of being like a red rose capable of standing before them, or the price of a ruby, or sweet candy. These specific similes are written to be very particular, suggesting the speaker makes changes to life with intention rather than allowing it to pass them by. When they are passive, they are drawn and being driven, still engaged in their life. Violetta does something interesting in qualifying the message of La Vie en Rose, an amazing example of living in good faith, in my opinion, being ever-changing, which will survive in the same way as literature, even now that they have disbanded. I love the way they utilize a different language to shift the framing and the sense of worldliness, but they also represent the subject with a different flower. A violet is also significant as their particular choice, perhaps purple as a combination of red and blue, or it could simply be blue. This is an extreme change, calling much of their experiences into question, but not necessarily vilifying how we change as people in a complex world. Another interesting quality of the song is how they describe a certain distance between the speaker and not necessarily the subject, but their abstract qualities, repeatedly using specific language like this, that, and it. This distance is not consistent, though, altering first in terms of them portraying ownership of the subject, addressing them in an aphra by the song's end. It's blending its own qualities to create a unique experience, even as one underneath a sky they reflect. After all, they also suggest the sky draws on the subject, seemingly comparing this to their own passive experience. They are connected in their flawed faith the same way as Sartre's pair on a bench. Say it with me, everyone. What do we love on this channel? Apostrophes. What will we also take? Some dramatic irony. There's an interesting dynamic in Fiesta because it's an apostrophe objectively, but it almost seems like the subject is an afterthought to the point you have to wonder if they know someone is listening, even if not directly in their presence. Fiesta really isn't about a party as one might expect. In my eyes, this song is about strength. The speaker once stood in front of a rose in La Vie en Rose. That precedence highlights their progress in letting their heart not only stand but stretch open. It's also interesting in terms of syntax, as letting it stand comes before the word heart, as if to portray the significance of taking things in stride rather than simply focusing on what one can own. It speaks in terms of things like the thickening of the speaker's gaze, and we've already talked about the importance of visual acuity in literature. I didn't know Tiresias was the 13th member of IZ*ONE. They're dazzling. They are seemingly figuratively waking up and shining and dancing and hugging themselves as they become closer to who they always wanted to be. There still is some distance, though. They directly address it. They talk about throwing a party, but the wording even feels theoretical, the crux of the song itself almost an afterthought like the subject, and yet they are readily able to embrace this fiesta when they do reach that realm of consideration, even making out the overarching festival as simply their own party apart from anyone else involved. Secret Story of the Swan is a game changer. The degrees of separation truly begin to vanish, as you can see from the very first couple lines of the song referring to this swan without any article, and they're doing it repeatedly in a sense that this swan represents a characteristic to presume and prescribe to people. They also address the quote-unquote mama within parentheses, encapsulated almost like it is tied up nicely with a bow and everything. There's a lot of repetition, but it plays into this concept of becoming more open and accessible, and the rule of three allows them to establish a sense of world building, but without actively constructing a fourth wall, for lack of better terms. It comes down to the intimacy of fingertips. It goes beyond the reach of fairy tales. It causes them to dance, and even if the world were to open up, they would not be plagued with stillness a la Sartre's No Exit. They are connected in their dreams on an abstract level, which might explain their disorientation as it relates to the unconscious. They are in a world of harmony and without fear, a paradise, and it's a beautiful thing, and no one talks about the story of the adult swan in The Ugly Duckling. Their life is framed in terms of their past, when growth and change and the ramifications of growth and change do not stop, ideally, ever. Introspection is, at times, responsible for the greatest transformations. That is the swan story, and it allows some of the vagueness Kep1er embraces because the story is secret and crafted for the individual, a journey but not an adventure. They can't give you all of the details because they establish it's a secret, and perhaps the ambiguity will bring forth transformation in you to understand and find the Prospero you can help go beyond this song. The first verse of Panorama alone makes me feel such an intense ache in my chest. It's like if your heart could grimace really hard. My heart makes a fist and releases it, but there's still a feeling of tension there, but it feels kind of good, like when you wholly feel the anguish in a piece of fiction. There are these long lines that feed you imagery without presenting complete thoughts, because the complete sentences we get are short commands, not necessarily terse. They say to ring a bell, for example, right before describing a bottomless heart, so there is a demand for a high tone to precede the introduction of depths we can never truly know. I talk a lot about framing, but what is framing? It's a lot of things, and Panorama certainly makes use of it in so many ways. Part of what makes poetry what it is lineation. Most poems use lineation to guide their thought processes. Panorama uses lineation to provide information that will overwhelm you in what appears to be a clean way. There's no real clean way to get across this density, another key to discerning poetry from prose. You can organize it, but there isn't a sense of relief allowed. The organization almost makes the ache swell, especially if you see where things are going. A photo is one moment, one frame, if you will. Shouting to take a panorama is a moment in itself that isn't captured, and it's a moment of inspiration shooting through the body, I imagine, like an intense fucking drug. Panorama isn't about the panorama, but what can't be pictured, as it pairs off details and devices and puts me in a flow state by disturbing flow with even more rich content in its ways of framing, more than duality can describe. The physical is abstract. The abstract is physical. Perhaps humanity should be summarized in pieces, fragmentary and girls. They suspend their dream within their story, like Unbi at the end of the Glitch music video. The speaker's voice is singular but far-reaching but cemented. There is the pairing of time versus space, and up versus down, and roses versus flight, like earth versus air, all giving the same impact of the red versus blue we started with. We're flying in a song about a still image. The song is exactly how you put so much of humanity in 3 minutes and 42 seconds. One Young says not to let her down, 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 and her heart is bottomless, but I'll fly or dance or whatever she wants for even just one more second if it will reassure her Eyes One was worth it. Eyes One was a miracle. What do I mean when I say Eyes One was a miracle? La Vie en Rose was not originally going to be their song at all, like I said before. We also have to acknowledge this lineup was supposed to be different. And even if it wasn't accurate, it could have been rigged differently. Your favorite Eyes One moment, a moment that is wholly real for us, may have never existed. Any one change would change the entire dynamic of most groups. And it hurts to think of this dynamic not existing because you have to accept that you care. You care despite the reality of the rigging scandal, despite disbandment, despite that achy feeling Panorama gives you when you think too hard and blink too hard and have to sit down for a second. Kep1er's story isn't over yet, and for that I am grateful, but I think more than anything that I want to make it red. I want to make it red.